Hello and welcome to Sourdough with Sam. Today I will be teaching you how to handle your starter. So we are going to feed this starter so we can make bread in about 8 hours. You want to feed your starter about 8 hours before you make bread so that all of the bacteria can eat the nutrients you give them and then rise and they're active to make bread. So when you take your starter out of the fridge, sometimes it'll have a little bit of like a grayish thing on top, and that's called hooch, and that's not a problem. Unless it gets extremely dark, then contact me. But basically, we have all this starter in here, and we want to throw away at least half of it. So, just throw that in your trash can. And we're throwing this away so that we don't have to feed as much of the bacteria, because if we left all this in, we'd have to put so much flour and water to get all the bacteria fed. So, as you can see, that's significantly less. It's on the sides right now, but it's about there. I dumped out most everything. So, looking at this, we're going to add flour and water to this. And we want to add more flour than water. Some people do a 1-to-1 ratio, and I find that doesn't work. So I basically do like 2 parts flour and 1 part water. I'm using all-purpose flour. You'll see bread flour at the store, and you don't need to use that. That just has a higher protein content, and it's actually not necessary, is what I found. So I use all-purpose flour. So I'm going to add about, let's see, how much is this? Since this is quite a bit of starter in here, this is a big jar, I'm gonna add a cup of flour. And we wanna add less water than we do flour. So I'm gonna try half a cup and see how that looks. And you can't really mess up this process. You just do it and see the consistency. All right, so I added it and it looks like this. And now I'll mix it up and check the consistency. Some people will say don't use metal when making sourdough, and I found that that is not actually a problem. So you can use a metal knife to stir this. Okay, this is about what I want. It should look almost like a shaggy dough. It should be pretty thick. So this is what it looks like for me right now. You could add a little bit more water to this and make it more of like a peanut butter texture, but this works great. So again, we're feeding our starter right now so we can make bread in about 8 hours. And you can feed your starter before bed and then make bread in the morning. But I am doing this in the morning and I'm gonna make my dough tonight. So what you're gonna do is take your lid to your jar and just sort of place it on top. You want a little bit of air to get in, and you're just gonna set this on your counter for about 8 hours, and you're gonna watch it grow and bubble. And once it's doubled, we know that it's time to make sourdough. And then as far as some other tips for storing your sourdough starter, you can put it in the fridge when you're not using it to make bread. Because if you leave it on the counter, you have to feed it every 24 hours, and that's just a lot of upkeep. And a lot of discard, which is what we put into the trash can in the beginning, and that's just like what you don't use. So yeah, this is the first step to sourdough. Hello! This is the second video of how to make sourdough bread. So for this step, we are going to be making the dough. You will need a kitchen scale, your sourdough starter that is ready. It will have bubbles in it like this, and ideally they should be a little bit bigger, but I'm rushing this. And a pretty big bowl. Also water, salt, and your all-purpose flour. So The way I like to do this is by weight. So you're going to place your bowl on here and then zero out your scale. And make sure it is set to grams. The proportions for this are going to be 150 grams of starter, 300 grams of water, and 500 grams of flour, and then 10 grams of salt. So you're going to pour your starter in. And that is 136 grams. All right, and that's 160, and we're gonna call it 150. It's fine. So you want to now mix your water in with this. Also, the starter should look pretty bubbly and just kind of like gooey now. Remember how it was like really thick when we mixed it, and now it's kind of liquidy, and that's how we know it's ready. So now we zero out our scale again, and we pour in 300 grams of filtered water. All right, and this I like to be pretty precise on, because this changes the hydration content, which is very important for your bread, and I found that 300 grams is perfect. Now you take your dough hook, which I've actually never used this before, but it's supposed to make it easier, and you mix them together. Oh, also, you want your starter to float. So I just took this piece up, and you see how it floats to the top instead of attaches to the bottom. So this starter is floating, which means it's also ready. And now you mix them. So what we're gonna be doing is making a shaggy dough, and then we'll need to do our stretch and folds, and I'll show you that in the next video. So you mix this up until there's clumps that are about this big, and your water is all like a white milky color. So now we zero out our scale again and pour in 500 grams of flour. There we go. And 10 grams of salt. Okay. Now we are going to mix this together with our hands. I'm going to start just with the dough hook to get a little bit of it incorporated into the water, and then I will probably use my hands to incorporate the rest. Another reason, and I'm going to take it off of the scale now. And then another reason I like doing 300 grams of water is it makes it so you can make this into a dough pretty easily, just with your hands. Because what happens is as time goes on, the water absorbs into the flour and the dough will get softer. So if you put this in a mixer with less water, it would look about the same because it's been kneaded and brought together. So this should take about 1 minute. Oh, and I'm gonna grab my bench scraper. And this one bends so that I can scrape down the edges of the bowl really easily to incorporate them into the shaggy dough. It looks like this right now. And you can punch it. You can really do whatever you want. This is a no-knead recipe, basically, because you don't have to do what I'm doing for like 10 minutes. It's only until you get all of it mixed together, and then we let our stretch and folds do the rest. All right. And it's okay if you have flour or little tiny clumps on the bottom or edges of the bowl. That's fine. And what I'm doing is just now picking up the edges. So now we have this ball, which is not smooth, but it will become smooth with our stretch and folds. So I'll show you what it looks like at the end, but just to reiterate, what we're gonna do is measure our ingredients by weight, and it's 150 grams of active starter, 300 grams of water, mix that together, add your flour, 500 grams, add your salt, 10 grams, mix it, and then knead it together until it comes together into a shaggy dough. And then we will come back in 30 minutes to do our stretch and folds. So this is what it looks like. There are two types of stretch and folds, and we're going to do the first one. So I forgot to mention, you put a shower cap or a kitchen cloth over it to make sure it doesn't get dry on the top. So we're going to take that off and see that our dough has relaxed a little bit. And we're gonna pull up one of the sides as if it was a square, kind of like the box, like a box. And then we're going to stretch up this side of the dough and fold it over. And then we're going to take this side of the box and stretch it. It's going to be a little harder to stretch every time you fold it. Okay, now we're going to do this side, and you can even like press your fingers together and smooth it out. You're going to feel clumps in the dough, and that's okay because this process gets them out. Also, you'll notice when you pull the dough, it comes apart like that into a hole very easily. And I'll show you at the end what it's supposed to look like. It's not supposed to do that after we've done all of our stretch and folds. So this is our fourth side. I'm kind of squeezing it, stretching it, and then folding it over the top. And that doesn't need to be perfect. So yeah, there we go. That's our stretch and fold. So what this does is it develops the gluten structures in the bread, which makes your bread rise better and can create better air bubbles in the bread. So now we're gonna cover it again and wait another 30 minutes and then come back and do the same type of stretch and fold. And after that, we're gonna do two more stretch and folds that are a different type. They're called coil folds, and it's a little bit easier when the bread gets a little softer. I did one of the stretch and folds again, so we're 2 folds in, and we're gonna do a third one. And since I'm feeling lazy, I'm just gonna go to bed after this, and that's fine. The bread will be better if you don't, though. So we're gonna do a coil fold for the last one. So we're gonna get it off with our bench scraper. The dough is a lot more smooth now and just kind of soft. So for this, you're gonna hold your dough like this, and I like to fling it like this. It's just the easiest way to do this. And then you roll it up like this. And now it's been rolled, and our ends are right here and here, and you're gonna go the opposite way. So do it again. And the goal of this is to make your dough feel tighter. So I'm gonna do this one more time. The more tension you build up on the dough, the better for those developing gluten structures. Beautiful. And basically you'll notice that your dough is going to fight back a little bit more every single time that you do this. And the last thing I was going to show you is the window pane test. So I'm pulling this apart, and it did tear, but I was able to get it so much thinner. And if you keep doing stretch and folds, it'll be like you can stretch it so thin and it won't break. Now I'm feeling lazy, so I'm not gonna actually do that, but we are going to put this in the fridge overnight, covered with a shower cap, and in the morning we'll have our next step. You can also leave it covered on the counter for I think 4 hours for the bulk ferment, 4 to 8 hours. I honestly forget. I can Google that for you if that's what you're trying to do. Good night. Also, the most amount of stretching folds you're going to want to do is 6. Generally what you can do is 4 in the beginning of the first type, where you fold it kind of in a square, and those are each 30 minutes apart, and then you can do 2 at the end of the coil folds, each an hour apart. So if I were to do this correctly as possible for me, I would do the square method and do those folds twice, each 30 minutes apart, and then I do the coil fold 30 to 45 minutes, and then I do the last coil fold in an hour from now. Okay. So this has been in the fridge overnight, and it has just about doubled in size. That's what we're looking for it to be plump and pretty big. And then actually, if you look at the bottom of the bowl, you see all these bubbles, which means that it's active and basically ready to go. And also, if you're looking on here, there's this little air bubble, and we just want our bread to have air bubbles in it. When you feel it, it's pretty fluffy. Like there's an air bubble that I can just feel. Ideally, I'd like to see a little bit more of an air bubble on the top somewhere, but it's okay. This is some bread. This is 3 times as much as that. And you can see just like as it's touching the shower cap, all these circles, and it means it's pretty active. This has also grown substantially, so I'll be shaping that as well, just not in the video. So with shaping, we need to get this out of the bowl, and sometimes it will release itself if you just put it upside down, but let's see. It's doing it. So basically, with bread shaping, I've found that if you do it, if you shape it once and then let it sit on the counter for 30 minutes and then shape it again, your bread is going to be taller and just stronger, better, have better air bubbles. So we will be doing that, but you don't actually have to shape it twice if you don't want to. So it's releasing really good right here, but not on the sides. So I'm gonna get my bench scraper, the one that bends. If you don't have this, you can just use your hands and detach it from the sides. So now it should come out a lot easier. You want to do this on an extremely clean counter that is dry. You don't want any cleaning product on the counter. You want to just wipe it clean and do the last wipe with water. So now if you look at that, that is some beautiful dough because of all those bubbles. So with our bread shaping, I'm gonna put you right here. Yeah, like that. And then I'm gonna put some banana bread in front of this phone and see if we can get a good angle for you. Okay, so with the shaping process, we want to stretch this out, but we don't want to pop the air bubbles. So we gently pull it apart into a square. Now we're gonna fold it into thirds. So we're gonna fold this half over, or this third over, and then we're gonna fold this over that. Now we're trying to get tension on the outside of the bread. So we are going to roll this and tuck it in. And this doesn't have to be perfect or anything, but we're gonna roll it into like a croissant. Beautiful. So now we're gonna do the hardest part, which shapes it into a ball. So you're going to place your hands on top and pull it towards you using the countertop to like kind of stick to the bread, and you pull it in a direction and then you twist it and it starts making it into a ball. Pull and twist, and you do this until it just feels firmer. I'm seeing some air bubbles come to the top, and overall the dough is feeling a lot less loose, which is great. So there we go. And then the bottom of the dough is going to look like this because that's where all the edges are being squeezed into. So that is how we shape our dough. Now we're gonna leave this on the counter covered with either a shower cap or a kitchen towel for about 30 minutes. Again, you don't have to do this step. You can just do the step after, but this will make your bread better. And yeah, also, if you want to make the best black beans of your life, here is how you do it. So you take an entire can of black beans and you don't drain the liquid, and I think that's the secret. And then you add butter, cumin, something sweet like monk fruit or sugar. Honey would probably work too. And then Frank's red hot sauce. You do like 3 dashes of that. Salt and pepper. And you let it cook for like 15 minutes until most of the moisture is gone. So that needs to go for another like 2 minutes. And it's so good. It's like my favorite thing right now. Anyways, I'm gonna eat that whole can of beans in a minute. It has been 30 minutes. I have shaped the other doughs as well. And we're going to do the same process over again. I'm having my assistant Jan film me so that you can see what's happening better. If you want to angle the camera down a little bit. So I'm going to shape this loaf again. And it's pretty attached to the counter, so you get in there with the bench scraper and take it off. And then you flip it over and start stretching out your bread. And you'll notice it is a lot more held together than last time. It's not as loose. And that's exactly what we want. So you stretch it a little bit like so. And then now we're gonna fold it into thirds again. So we fold our left side over, and then we fold our right side over that. And now we're going to tuck it like this. And this time it'll be harder to do the circular motion than last time. Your goal is to get this side that's a spiral and this side that's a spiral to basically disappear. And the way you do that is you stretch this top dough over them. So you pull this down using the friction of the counter, and then you bring it to the top. So it's like a down and around type of motion. And you do this about 5 to 10 times until you've gotten rid of the edges and you feel like this is pretty connected at the bottom. So now that that's done, we are going to put it in a flour baton. So you just take a little bit of your flour and sprinkle it in here to make sure it doesn't stick. And a little bit more. Now you flip it over and it's like the messy side goes on top. And I think you have circular batons, which is fine. I have this shape, it doesn't really matter. Then you cover it with a shower cap and leave it for about 4 hours. Hello! It's been 1 week since you looked. It's been 4 to 5 hours since you last saw me. This is the loaf that you last watched. This one was bigger. Do you see how much bigger it is? I'd say that's about double. They're basically just big and jiggly, and you can see little air bubbles. So we're going to bake them now. What you want to do is get a big baking sheet and line it with parchment paper. Then flip your bread over like So, and now you will need your bread lame. So the bread lame, you put it together. Here, let me show you. So it looks like this and this guy, and then you feed this through here. And this is a really sharp, thin blade. This is probably my favorite part, is scoring the bread. And then I'm gonna also do this one. All right. So when we score the bread, we want one really deep cut in each of them to let out the steam so that it doesn't bust on the edges, like kind of on the bottom. It's fine if it does that, but it's just sort of better if we can direct that. Before we do the deep cut though, I like to decorate my bread. And the classic is just where you cut it like this, and these are shallow cuts. And then it'll kind of look like a little wheat stalk. So basically the faster you go, the better it's gonna move through the bread without catching. So like this is me moving slow, and you see how it's kind of like bending, and then this is me moving fast. So I'm gonna score this one, and then we will do our last score and put them in the oven. I have the oven at 400 degrees, and see, that's also a light cut. And now we're gonna do a deep cut. So I kind of like to go over it twice sometimes. And you see that's really getting into the dough. There we go. And now we're gonna put them in the oven. And I have another baking tray in there. So go ahead and pop them in, close your oven, and grab about 5 ice cubes. And just put them on the bottom baking sheet and close your oven. Set your timer to 25 minutes. And basically the point of the ice cubes is to steam the outside of the bread. This helps you create a great crust, and the 25 minutes is how long we want our bread to be steaming for. So don't open the oven until 25 minutes has passed, and I will show you this second part of baking it. It's been 25 minutes. Now there's gonna be steam, so you gotta be careful.
Ooh, steam.
And you're gonna go ahead and take out the bottom tray because it's done its job. And now we're going to get the bread to be brown on the outside and have a nice shell.
Ooh,
So
nice.
these puppies didn't rise that much because I didn't do that many stretch and folds, but that's okay. And I'm gonna flip it around because my oven isn't perfect. And we're gonna kick it in here for another 15 minutes.
Crunch. It's just steak over here.
Ta-da! It's been 15 minutes. They're very hard on the outside, and as they cool, it'll soften up a little bit. You see the air escaped right where we did the deep cut, which is exactly what we want. They didn't get that much rise because I think I overproofed them. And that just means that I let them sit in the baskets too long. But hey, I was doing pottery, and you gotta do what you gotta do. So you want it to get this golden brown color. It could technically be just a little bit darker. And now you let it cool for about an hour, but you can get into it whenever you want. There you go. This is what it looks like when you cut it open. Ideally, the bubbles would be a little bit bigger, but again, I overproofed it, and it's pretty good.